Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Chess.com Global Championship. This is it. This is what we've worked for the last 7 days, for the last several months. Today we crown a winner. Going into today, Wesley So has a 3-1 lead versus Nihal Sarin. Nihal has to make an epic comeback, but it's not crazy. He just has to win a couple of games to even the match. The first person to 4.5 points wins the match. Naturally, so Wesley is in very commanding shape, but Nihal starts with the black pieces, and yesterday he had a very good position actually with the black pieces in that game that he lost, so anything can happen. Now, before we jump into the games, I'm going to move the microphone a little bit to the side so you see me head on here. Some of you who followed the live broadcast might have seen my apology video. Well, I'm going to say a few things on that note here. I just want to apologize for a few things. Over the last week, kind of a couple of minor things. Obviously, travel setup, bad. Microphone right in my face, like terrible lighting over there, you know, just terrible shading on my face. Bedroom, unkempt bed means I don't have my life put together. And it's been tough. I mean, it's tough anytime you have to make videos specifically about a tournament. You guys, it's tough to name the titles, Recap 1, Recap 2, Recap 3, because YouTube just suppresses all of them. And so I've tried to name them something really bogus and sort of hope that you keep on. So that's number one. All right, it's been a little tough. But more importantly, I would like to apologize as a New Yorker to the city of Toronto. Some of you may watch my stream, some of you may not. And I jokingly state that as a New Yorker, I get to decide whether other largely populated cities are elite or not. And many of you have been telling me about Toronto for a long time, and I've sort of jokingly said, Toronto is just the New York of Canada. It's a wannabe New York. It's this and that. Let me tell you something. I have walked these streets of Toronto the last 7 days. I've run into like 10 or 15 people who were chess fans. They have been super nice. People who were not chess fans, who I did not run into, were also super nice. It's such a walkable city. And the air feels crisp on your skin when you're breathing it. I walked super far in multiple directions, and so far what I've seen is great. Now, obviously, every city has its problems, of course. Also, Canada has spectacularly high taxes, so not everything is always 100%, but that's what you have to pay to have a very nice city. Maybe local people here in Toronto will say, "Oh, grass is always greener." It's got its problems, but I just want to say sorry, and I want to just want to apologize. You know what I mean? As I said in my interview on the set. Chess is about improving from your mistakes, not making the same mistakes multiple times. And yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I've made fun of your city. And yeah, I actually think many cities are probably better than New York. All of these cities that I've been making fun of that New York doesn't. Did you guys know that like Edinburgh, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, in Scotland is like the #1 city in the world? I had no idea. Anyway, that's my apology. I didn't do anything crazy. Just want to apologize for being a stubborn, arrogant New Yorker who wants to rep his city. This is game 5. So game 1 of day 2. And Nihal once again begins with g6. Wesley, in last time they played, happily entered a system against the modern. But this time, Wesley plays in a very non-confrontational way. He plays an invitation to the ready. Right? I mean, excuse me, to the Catalan, not the ready. So if black plays the move like d5 here, this is essentially white trying to play for a Catalan. This is also known as like a symmetrical Grunfeld kind of, because black played the Grunfeld setup with Fianchetto and then d5. There's a lot of theory here. Positions are very symmetrical. Something like this. It's called the Neo-Grunfeld defense. But instead of that, Nihal plays c5. So he plays what's called the pterodactyl defense. Point is that if white takes on c5, white can immediately win the pawn back with queen a5 check, and actually has a very active bishop. Wesley is trying to restrict the young player by playing moves like c3. Nihal still plays queen a5, and now Wesley plays a3 because he wants to successfully play the move before. He's basically not letting Nihal have any fun. Like, for instance, Nihal is looking to create this imbalance of the position. So at least something is imbalanced, and the position is complicated. And Wesley's like, dude, I just need to make a few draws. Now I throw in this, and the position remains exactly symmetrical, right? Knight to f6, knight c3, we both develop and we both castle. And how is black ever going to do anything here with white enjoying just a very healthy 0.7 advantage? Well, bishop to e6, looking to make Wesley play in a provocative way with the move knight to g5, which obviously looks very appealing, trying to damage the structure. But then black would come here, and actually this bishop is sort of difficult to get rid of since neither of these pawns can go backwards, right? Spoiler alert, in case you didn't know the rules of chess. Now, bishop b2 is played, okay? Bishop b2 is played in this game, and Wesley just choosing not to engage whatsoever. And by the way, Wesley also has the option to play d5 at some moment. You'll see that later. Like here, for instance, Wesley has the opportunity to try to push for d5 with the move e4. e4 and d5, yes, the bishop can come to c4. That actually only improves the position for white. Then white has this to kick the bishop out, and we'll just try to, push forward at the end when everything is settled. That bishop will hit that pawn. So a very nice position for Wesley, who once again just plays a pass-back move and doesn't do a whole lot. Occupies the g4 square, doesn't want black's bishop or black's knight to get there. Like, at some point, Nihal is going to have to start taking a serious amount of risk here to win this game. Rook fc8, rook c1. Wesley, once again, has the move d5. He can attempt to try to trap this bishop, but this bishop will wiggle its way into e4 and sort of just stand there. And if knight e4, bishop g7, king g7, black is sort of just creating, again, imbalance, something that you need to try to win this game, because otherwise everything is dead equal, and you've both traded your c-pawn. So rook c1 is played, a5, b5, and suddenly Nihal is better. Nihal is just straight up better here. Now Nihal has three ways forward. Number one, this very interesting move, bishop to h6. Laser beaming, forcing white to play this. Now bishop c4 comes in. The white rook will maybe go to e1. And black is just playing on activity and momentum. Maybe a4. Taking on b5 is okay, but it can be a little bit risky. Your bishop is always a target. And, well, if your bishop's not a target, your queen will be a target, right? So it's something you need to be cognizant of in this situation. Another plan, though, that black has is this move a4, which disconnects these two pawns. Makes it very difficult for white to block the position, and the bishop is coming to b3 potentially, which is why the best move is knight d2 according to the computer, or the move d5. Just disallowing that and then something like this. But the position can get very complicated very quickly. Here comes knight e4, here comes knight c5. Black is totally in good shape, but Nihal, as we have seen throughout this match, plays in not the most accurate way, and not the way that you would think kind of suits his style. It plays knight d5, which makes sense, okay? The idea there is to do this, okay? To get the structure stable, move the queen back, and then put the knight on b6, where it might target this pawn. The thing is, though, here Nihal had a chance to not trade. Put his knight on b4, then put his bishop on c4, and then put this knight maybe on e4 or d5 in the future. So this, maybe going to one of these two squares. And like visually speaking, this position actually looks pretty decent for black. I mean, black's pieces are just standing there pressuring white. White still has to make moves. Like, if you're ever going to play for a win, this is the position, you know what I mean? But Nihal just plays h6. He plays a pass-back move, gets the trade, backs up, and now Wesley's like, all right, let's trade some pieces. And let's just play defense. Like, Wesley's not interested in taking any risk. Look at this. Rock solid central structure. What on earth can you possibly do? If you try to trade rooks, that's great. You know, that's excellent. I will take, and then I will try to trade queens. And at the end of the day, you're losing this pawn because your bishop is just completely out of the game. So, pretty good position for white. Nihal plays queen e6, and Wesley doesn't even hesitate. Wesley plays rook takes rook, rook c1, bishop c1, trades the queens, trades the pawns, and a couple moves later, the b-pawns also fall off the board. And Wesley just was not entertaining it whatsoever. He's like, I'm not going to take any risk like I did in that other game. It's 5 pawns per side. It's knight and bishop. That's it. That's it. And the players played a few more moves, naturally. They didn't have a lot of time, and I mean, Nihal was just hoping that Wesley did something catastrophic. Wesley did not do anything catastrophic in this game. Players ended up bringing some pieces forward, but this position is harder to lose than it is to win. Let's put it this way. Pawns are traded, and ultimately, look at this move. Bishop g5, according to the legal rules of chess, forcing a draw because the pawn is traded and there is insufficient checkmating material here. Players play on a little bit more, and a draw is made. Now Nihal has to win. Nihal is now down 4-2, okay? And, no, he's down 3.5 to 1.5. I apologize. It was 3-1 yesterday. It's now 3.5, 1.5. It's officially match point, which means that if Wesley wins this game, he wins the whole thing. And before the game, I predicted that finally we would be seeing the move knight c3 from Nihal, because it's a very forcing line, but like the Nimso Indian is not winning for black, and you know, you can play in some ways like e3, bishop d2, which at least keeps some pieces on the board, and you know, you try to do your best. But Nihal played something that he has played before, and he just played it against Anish Giri, and that's this move, bishop f4. Nihal, once again in this game, plays a Queen's Gambit London hybrid, which is a crazy risky option. Crazy risky, because We just saw in that game d5, cd5, this entire line. It's a very trendy, kind of very modern line. And in that game against Anish, we had knight e2, cd4, which is exactly how the previous game went between Neiman and Robson in the U.S. Championship, and then like e5 and so on. And Wesley in this position, just without even any hesitation, takes with the queen. Meaning he saw this coming. He was well prepared. And I was throughout the match very stunned at Nihal's opening choices with the white pieces because he plays the London. And I just don't know why he went away from it. Like, he could have played the London on the second move, he could have tried to play, but it seemed like Nihal was so respectful of Wesley's repertoire, and for good reason, but he totally changed his approach. Like, the bishop f4 is a tricky line, but it is not something that you can play if your opponent knows that it's going to happen. Does that make sense? It's a tricky line, but it's a dangerous line. Why is it a dangerous line? Because white is losing a pawn. White is just straight up losing a pawn and hoping to get black out of their comfort zone, right? Look at this, gambiting yet another pawn. And what does Wesley do? He just gets all the way back to the home square. This is not the way someone plays if they don't know what they're doing. In fact, Wesley played all of these moves, bishop to e7 and everything, instantly because he had it prepared. So another potentially offbeat but very dangerous opening choice by Nihal, who is now down a pawn and he's all in. Now, bishop d7. And bishop d7 is a very interesting idea. Because, like, what is it doing? Well, the idea, as you're about to see, is that black wants to play a6 and maybe play b5, c4. Maybe. But given the match situation, Wesley is up 3.5, 1.5. Wesley doesn't care about taking risk. He doesn't need to take any risk. He can draw the rest of the games. Nihal has to take the risk. Wesley's just going to go here and here. He's going to trade the bishop back, give Nihal the pawn, and Wesley will just have no problems. He will have an equal position. He is not interested in holding onto the pawn. What gives white the compensation here for the pawn? The fact that if black castles, black could get mated. Most likely not. But for example, like if I just give, a couple of bad moves here, like this is a very nice way to just lose the game just very quickly. All right, h5, you see the eval bar grow there. Like, this is the way you would get blown off the board here. Yeah, Wesley plays a6, and now Nihal is out of moves. Nihal can bring his rook, he can bring his knight to try to go to d6, but black hasn't castled yet. So what do? Nihal castles. Now Wesley says, oh, terrific. Well, your rook is not on the h-file anymore, so I don't have to worry about anything. I can castle too. Now you can play queen e4, that's excellent. I'm just going to go g6. Black, by the way, could play the move f5, but this is completely unnecessary and would just weaken your position, right? There's no need to do that. So black can just play g6 and be completely fine. Nihal plays rook a d1, and Wesley plays this bishop b5 idea. This is such a surgical, technical way of playing the position. Straight up just losing a pawn, but let's not forget, black was up a pawn. We go down this kind of rabbit hole of exchanges. White is not any better here. Not anything substantial. Like, white doesn't have some substantial advantage to try to win in the long run. Position is just totally balanced. Black will finish development, put a rook on the d-file, and we can shake hands. So Nihal plays knight c4, and now launches an attack. And this is it. This is Nihal's last stand. Because if he wins, it's not his last stand. But if he loses, that's it. Like, he's going out on his sword. Queen e4 is a checkmate threat, and shockingly, Wesley So of top 5 caliber doesn't blunder checkmate in one. Now, at this point, Fabiano Caruana was in the commentary booth with myself and Daniel Naroditsky, and he said that Nihal has to play the move knight to d6. It's the best move, probably. The point is that you want a very strong anchor pawn. You want to weaken black's dark squares. You want to try to continue the attack. The only problem with playing like this is black's knight on d5 is a killer. It's a fantastic piece. And a further problem is black doesn't actually have to take. Black can sort of ignore you and maybe just trade bishops with you and, I don't know, play queen c7 or something and just ignore you. But visually speaking, this is a very nice position, right? So Nihal has to play, oops, I jumped way far back. Nihal now has to play knight to d6. Like, he has to do this. All his momentum is carrying him forward. And maybe there was something here Nihal didn't like. Like, for example, this move c4, according to the computer, is a very annoying move. But I don't know if that's what he didn't like. He chose not to play knight to d6, and it's sort of been the story of the match. Just a little bit too hesitant, a little bit too respectful. He backs up to e3 instead, and the ideas are still strong. He wants to get a queen to h6. He wants to maybe zig. Again, if I gave white a couple of moves in a row, like, white would be in very good shape. White would play bishop f4 and h5, and as you can see from this position, there's tactics on the queen, which is, I suppose, like, let's say something like queen c7. There were no tactics on the queen. Yeah, white would play knight d2, knight e4, knight g5, bishop f4, bishop g5, h5. The problem is Black is right there. He's going to trade one of these bishops. And by the way, yet another moment here, right? H5, a potential move. Queen H6, a potential move. Nihal plays knight D2 to try to get the knight to E4 and then try to get Queen H6 and try to get knight F6. Again, we give white 3 moves in a row. It's perfect. But the other guy on the other side of the board is going to take. Now the queen can't go to that diagonal. And he hits the queen with tempo. Not only does he hit the queen with tempo, the king now always has an escape. So the queen moves to E3. It's going to H6. Wesley now cold-blooded. Doesn't get scared of the attack at all. Does not get scared, reroutes his knight from the edge of the board into the center, planting it there firmly, disconnecting the white rook from controlling any squares. Nihal plays knight to F6 check, hoping for bishop F6 and some sort of attack. Now, Wesley can do this, because by the time you get over here, this move is a cold shower and there is no mate. The knight plays defense and offense, black is better. But Wesley is such a savage, he just walks his king up. He goes, what, like, you're not, there's no threat. Bishop F4 to try to get over there. Knight F5 hits the queen rotates over, and the queen is threatening H5. Sorry, white is threatening H5. Nihal is trying to break in, checkmate Wesley over there, make his attack work, make a comeback. Wesley here does not stop the attack. He invites the attack in with the move king to H8. This is such a savage move. Wesley playing king G7, not biting once, and not biting again, just king H8, and that's a threat. Why is it a threat? Because if black had played bishop takes knight, this would have been a check, and white would have won a queen. But by moving the king to H8, H5 has been completely neutered because bishop takes F6 would now win the bishop because it wouldn't be check. An offensive yet defensive king move to the corner of the board, completely unafraid. Nihal now jumps backwards and tries to plant his knight in the center of D6. Wesley immediately, by the way, swapping rooks, swapping another pair. And now once again, there are tricks here. If take, there is the very nice queen D3, a pin on the bishop to the queen, a pin on the bishop to the rook. Life is good for white. And Wesley finishes the triangle, if you will, G7, H8, and back to the home square. A cold-blooded defensive move yet again, and the game is over. The game is simply over here because you cannot take. Nihal continues to strike and ultimately gets a bit too desperate and miscalculates the fact that after G takes F4, there is no mate. There is no mate on G7. The knight covers. There is no king H8, knight F7 mate in one because Wesley's not going to blunder it. Nihal takes. Wesley trades everything. Picks up a couple of more pawns, defends his king. And ladies and gentlemen, you are now looking at your first inaugural Chess.com global champion, Wesley So, taking home $200,000. Credit to him for just an incredibly high-quality final event overall, with the exception of one game to shake off the jet lag coming back from Iceland. Commiserations to Nihal Sarin for also a spectacular demonstration coming down to the final 2. He had to beat Ding Liren, the world championship contender, and he had to beat Vladimir Kramnik. Fabiano Caruana said Nihal Sarin beat 3 current or former 2,800 level players. Kramnik was 2,800, Ding Liren is 2,800, and Anish Giri was rated 2,800, like 0.00, unofficially in the middle of a tournament. I think his highest rating ever officially is 2,798 or something, but unofficially he was 2,800 at some point. And Nihal Sarin, another young teenage superstar coming out of India, wins $100,000. Just amazing. What more to say? Thank you all for the support over the last week. Again, apologies for the setup. You know, it's hard to make YouTube titles for a week straight, like recap 1, recap 2, because YouTube hates it. It won't even recommend it to you, and then you won't watch. So if I name something a bit more clickbaity, listen, a few people complain, but I think 98.5% of you are probably very happy with the content, and the 1.5% that are upset will write me the comments and scare me, and then I'm like, oh my god, do I have to rename my videos? And I would love, trust me, I would love to name my videos exactly what it is in the video, but when you're doing recaps for a week straight, it's not possible, and the videos won't perform well, and that's sort of my job. So that concludes the coverage. The video that you see tomorrow, I will probably be back home in New York. The grind does not stop. I will come back to New York. I will make more content, and it will be great. And that concludes our coverage of the Chess.com Global Championship, y'all. I hope you enjoyed. Credit to Wesley. Credit to Nihal. Good fight. Spectacular display by Wesley over the course of the finals, and that's all. That's all. Now a big adrenaline dump as the event is over. I will see you all tomorrow right back here for more content. And you know the drill. Get out of here. Oh, and once again, sorry to Toronto. And I'm learning my lesson about overrating New York. Get out of here.